Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas, and we bring you the latest in everything cool every single day. We had a fantastic trip to Washington, D.C. Thank you so much, Ubisoft, but it's good to be home. It's good to be back right here in our studio at 390 West Hastings Street in Vancouver, where David Hayter will be our guest. Yes, Solid Snake will be our guest on EP Live tomorrow, which is at a different time, 1 p.m. PST, 4 p.m. EST. So please come down and watch us live in person if you're in Vancouver, or watch us on our channel. We've got a rundown to get to for today. This one's going out to Stephen V, who is very excited that he found us because he used to watch EP way back on the Space Channel back in the day. Thank you so much for finding us again. Let's get started with your rundown. Starfleet is going to continue the voyage of the USS Discovery for at least another year, but there might be a new captain. CBS has renewed Star Trek Discovery for a third season. In a statement, the network says that the current second season of the show has helped drive a record number of new subscribers to their streaming service, CBS All Access, although, like most streaming platforms, they haven't released specific viewership numbers. They're making some personnel changes for the third season. Co-executive producer Michelle Paradise has been promoted to showrunner and will serve alongside current showrunner Alex Kurtzman. She came aboard the show halfway through the development of the second season and has helped steer the series away from the dark tone of its first year and towards the more optimistic and hopeful tone of the last episodes. No word on when season 3 might appear on your view screen. CBS is developing several other Trek programs for All Access, including a limited series that will see Patrick Stewart return as Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
Make it so.
I have not watched the new season of Star Trek Discovery. I happen to like the darker tone of the first season, but I'm glad to hear that Star Trek is veering more into what we remember from the Gene Roddenberry classic. I think it's that hopeful, optimistic kind of hopefulness about Star Trek that makes it so compelling, and that utopian ideal is something that we, as the human species, must strive for as we look to the stars, you know, which I think that was the whole message of Star Trek to begin with. So I'm glad that they're going more in that direction. Very excited to see Jean-Luc Picard back on the screen and to see all of these new Trek developments. It's cool. Obviously, making CBS All Access a lot of money, but I think making Trek fans very happy.
Proceed.
Rami Malek just won an Oscar for Bohemian Rhapsody, and now he might make even cooler cinematic history by playing a Bond villain. Multiple outlets report that Rami Malek is in final negotiations to play the main villain in the next James Bond movie. No official announcements have been made, so we don't know what kind of villain he might be, although there are rumors that he'll be playing a blind man who uses his brain to go up against 007. Malek wouldn't be the first Oscar winner to play a Bond villain. The last two films both had Oscar-winning bad guys, Christoph Waltz as Spectre's villainous leader Blofeld, and Javier Bardem as Skyfall's flamboyant antagonist Raul Silva. The next Bond movie hits theaters next summer. I think Rami Malek is an incredible actor, and I think this is a bold choice for him to be a Bond villain. We've seen that before, where the James Bond villains aren't really physically imposing, but they're psychologically terrifying, or they're menacing with their intellect, and I think Malek veers more in that direction. He doesn't look like he'd be any kind of a threat to Daniel Craig whatsoever. It feels like Craig would just go pop, and Malek would just flop, and that would be the end of the movie. But it does feel like Malek can portray that intelligence and that sinister, creepy quality that I think would make a pretty interesting Bond villain. I just hope that this movie is amazing. You know, it's going to be Craig's last one, and I just want him to go out on a high note. All of that baggage of him sort of complaining, and then they having to cough up all kinds of money to get him back. I want all of that scrubbed, and I just want the last Bond movie with Daniel Craig in it to be awesome. And I think if Rami Malek is going to be one of those ingredients, they're on the right step towards that. Speaking of villains, Disney is turning to some of their worst evildoers to help sell their streaming service. Disney is reportedly developing a villainous live-action series for their new Disney Plus streaming platform. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the new show is called Book of Enchantment and is based on a series of young adult novels by author Serena Valentino that focus on iconic Disney antagonists like the Evil Queen from Snow White, the Sorceress Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, and the Sea Witch Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Disney has already explored their villains in movies like Maleficent and the TV series Once Upon a Time, so they're hoping the new show will be just as popular and help drive interest in their streaming platform. They're also developing new Marvel and Star Wars shows for the service. It goes online this fall. This is a no-lose proposition here, I think, what Disney is doing. They're putting everything, they're betting the whole farm on these shows and the movies. I mean, they're They're accessing a huge library of their own films already, of course, which will be part of the platform, but they're making tons of new content, and they're just diving deep and leaning heavily into all of the properties and characters that people know and love. That's what Disney Plus is all about. It's going to say, how could you resist something like this? Deadshot has apparently stayed on the right side of the law because he's no longer a member of the Suicide Squad. Will Smith will apparently not be back for Suicide Squad 2. Variety reports that talks between Smith and Warner Brothers have broken down over scheduling conflicts, so we won't be seeing his character again, at least not this time around. In his place, Margot Robbie will be back as Harley Quinn, and there are plenty of other characters from the first film that could return as well, not to mention characters from the comics that could be introduced in the film universe for the first time. Behind the camera, Suicide Squad 2 is said to be written and directed by Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn, who came aboard the project last year shortly after Disney fired him from the third Guardians movie. Suicide Squad 2 hits theaters in August 2021, and that just seems so far away. How can they not schedule a few days of shooting with Will Smith before? Maybe he's just like, I didn't like that first movie that much, or I didn't like the... It just seems suspicious to me. That's very far away. They really could find at least a cameo shot of Will Smith popping into this thing, you know? He was, I think, a bright spot in that first movie. He's so charismatic. He's such an awesome actor. He's just fun to watch on camera. So I feel like this is a silly mistake on Warner Brothers' part, or maybe Will Smith said, nope, look, man, I'm better than that, and I don't want to be a part of this stuff, even with James Gunn behind the camera. And maybe James Gunn said, look, I want to scrub a lot of the stuff that was in that first movie, because even though it made tons of money and they're making a sequel, that first movie was garbage, and I think everybody knows that. And I think James Gunn doesn't want to make garbage. I think he is really looking at this as a nice way to kind of redeem himself in the eyes of Hollywood and make Warner Brothers a lot more money and make it more interesting and make these stories and this idea of villains being used for good a lot more compelling. And I think he's got a lot of different villains that he can pull from, and we're probably going to start hearing all about that very soon. But it is shocking that the movie is so far away and Will Smith is just so busy that he can't do at least a few days filming on this thing. I think he doesn't want that. Over in another corner of the DC universe, it's going to take a few years for Aquaman to swim back to theaters. DC and Warner Brothers have announced that Aquaman 2 will hit theaters on December 16th, 2022. That's 4 years after the first film surfaced, which is longer than the usual 2 to 3 year wait between sequels. So the studio is likely hoping that the billion-dollar blockbuster success of the first film will help keep the character fresh in everyone's mind. Before his next film arrives, there's always a possibility that Jason Momoa will cameo as Aquaman in other DC movies. On top of that, the studio is also developing an Aquaman spin-off focusing on the first film's terrifying trench, so we'll have plenty of underwater action while we wait for Aquaman 2. James Wan is set to produce the second film, although it's unclear if he'll be back to direct. I think that's what might be the underlying story here, is that Warner Brothers absolutely wants James Wan back to direct. They want to recreate the scenario of the success of the first film. Clearly, Aquaman 2 is one of the most important movies in the whole Warner Brothers library now, and who would have thought that? But you know what? I enjoyed Aquaman 1. I'm looking forward to Aquaman 2.
Could have just peed on it.
All right, that's going to do it for our rundown today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow, but with EP Live and our guest, David Hayter, and we're going to be shooting live in our studio space right here at 390 West Hastings in Vancouver. So if you are in town, please come down and watch the show live and in person, or you can watch the show live on our channel. That's at 1 p.m. PST tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Get caught up on all of our content. We'll see you tomorrow. Play forever.